The massive screen in the Galactic Council's main chamber showed endless stars and a mysterious fleet of ships floating silently in the void. Every member of the council leaned forward in their seats, their eyes fixed on the images being transmitted from the outer rim of explored space. Captain James Miller stood at attention before the council, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of the holographic displays. He watched as High Counselor Vale of the Axioms rose from his crystalline throne, the being's translucent body catching and reflecting light in complex patterns. This derelict fleet, Vale's voice echoed through the chamber, appears to be approximately 50,000 years old. Our initial scans show primitive metal alloys and basic propulsion systems. The crystalline being made a sound that might have been a laugh. Hardly worth our time, except perhaps for raw materials. Miller felt his jaw tighten. He had spent the last 3 weeks studying the preliminary data from the fleet's discovery, and everything about it seemed wrong, or rather, too right. The formation of the ships, their positioning, even their power-down sequence, it all spoke of careful planning, not abandonment. With respect, High Counselor, Miller spoke up, his voice steady despite the dismissive looks from the council members. I request permission to lead a research team to study the fleet before any salvage operations begin. The chamber erupted in quiet chuckles and whispers. A tall, blue-skinned council member leaned over to his neighbor, not bothering to lower his voice. The humans always want to play with old toys. Vale's crystalline form shimmered with what Miller had learned to recognize as amusement. Captain Miller, while we appreciate Earth's recent contributions to the Galactic Council, surely you understand that technology from 50,000 years ago holds no value beyond its basic materials. Our civilization has advanced far beyond such. He paused, searching for the right word. Primitive attempts at space travel. Miller pulled up his own holographic display. Council members, look at this formation. He highlighted the arrangement of the ships. This isn't random. These vessels were deliberately positioned in a perfect geometric pattern. And here, he zoomed in on one of the larger ships. These aren't signs of battle damage or age. These ships were powered down systematically. Admiral Robert Kane, the human representative to the council, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had warned Miller about challenging the council's assumptions too directly. The Axioms, in particular, took pride in their technological superiority. Captain, Vale's voice carried a hint of patronizing patience. Your species' fascination with historical artifacts is admirable. But we are discussing nearly 1,000 ships, each requiring significant resources to study, resources that could be better spent elsewhere. Miller tried one more time. 3 weeks. Give me 3 weeks with a small team. If we find nothing of value, the salvage operations can proceed as planned. The council chamber fell silent as Vale considered the request. The crystalline being's surface rippled with changing colors, a sign of internal deliberation. 2 weeks, Vale finally announced. You have 2 weeks, Captain Miller. But your team must include observers from the council, and you will submit daily reports. The High Counselor's form darkened slightly. And Captain, when this proves to be nothing more than an ancient garbage heap, remember that it was the council's generosity that allowed this investigation. Miller straightened his back and nodded. Thank you, High Counselor. We'll begin immediately. As the chamber emptied, Admiral Kane approached Miller. The older man's face showed both concern and resignation. You're poking a nest of angry wasps, James. The Axioms don't like being questioned, especially about technology. Something's not right about those ships, sir, Miller replied quietly. The design principles, the positioning, it all feels familiar somehow. Kane sighed. Just be careful. The Council may have accepted Earth into their ranks, but many still see us as barely evolved primates who got lucky with our faster-than-light drive design. He patted Miller's shoulder. And try not to antagonize our crystalline friends too much. They hold 3/4 of the council votes. Miller watched as the Admiral walked away, then turned back to the massive screen still showing the ancient fleet. In the dim light of distant stars, the massive ships hung in perfect formation, their dark hulls hiding secrets that nagged at the edges of his mind. Something about their design, their very essence, called to him, and he was going to find out why. The small research vessel cut through the silence of space, approaching the massive ancient fleet. Inside, Dr. Anna Thompson pressed her hand against the viewport, her eyes wide, as she took in the scale of the ships before them. Each vessel was bigger than anything humanity had ever built, their dark hulls stretching for kilometers. "It's incredible," she whispered, more to herself than to the others. Captain Miller stood behind her, arms crossed. "And we got 13 days to figure out why." He turned to the small crew gathered in the observation room. Besides Thompson and himself, there were 3 other humans and 2 Axiom observers, their crystalline forms glowing softly in the dim light. "The Council has graciously allowed us this opportunity," one of the Axiom observers said, its tone making clear what it thought of this waste of time. "Though we fail to see what you hope to find." Miller ignored the comment. "Dr. Thompson, you're up first. What can you tell us about the design?" The archaeologist pulled up several holographic images. "These ships don't match any known construction style from 50,000 years ago. The hull design is elegant, efficient." She highlighted several sections. "Look at these angles, these curves. Every part serves a purpose. There's no wasted space, no decorative elements. Whoever built these was practical." "Like humans," Miller said quietly. The second Axiom observer flickered in what might have been annoyance. "Surely you're not suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything yet," Miller cut in. "Let's do our jobs and see where the evidence leads us." Their small ship docked with what appeared to be the fleet's flagship, a massive vessel that dwarfed their research craft. The team suited up and entered through an airlock that, surprisingly, was compatible with their modern equipment. "That's odd," Thompson said through the comm system. "These connection points, they're nearly identical to current standard designs." The Axiom observers said nothing, but their crystalline forms pulsed with darker colors. Inside, their lights revealed corridors that seemed both alien and strangely familiar. Thompson ran her scanner over the walls, frowning at the readings. "These alloys, they're not primitive at all. The molecular structure is incredibly complex. I've never seen anything like it." Miller touched one of the walls. Despite the 50,000 years that had passed, the surface was smooth, unmarked by time. "No decay," he muttered. "How is that possible?" They made their way deeper into the ship, each discovery raising more questions. The layout felt intuitive to the human team members, as if they somehow knew where they were going. The Axiom observers followed, their earlier dismissiveness giving way to uncertain silence. In what appeared to be the ship's bridge, Thompson stopped suddenly. "Captain," she called out, her voice trembling with excitement. "You need to see this." Miller joined her at a control panel. There, barely visible under 50 millennia of darkness, was a symbol. As Thompson's light passed over it, they could make out a familiar shape, an ancient version of the Earth Expeditionary Force logo. "That's impossible," one of the Axiom observers said, its voice carrying a note of alarm. "Your species barely achieved space flight 10,000 years ago." Miller's heart was pounding. "Unless," he began. "Unless everything we know about human history is wrong," Thompson finished. She was already taking samples, running more scans. "Captain, these ships, I think humans built them. Not our current civilization, but an earlier one. An advanced human civilization that existed and vanished before our recorded history began." The Axiom observers moved away, their crystalline forms communicating rapidly with each other in pulses of light. Miller knew they were reporting to the Council, and he knew what this discovery meant. The Council races, especially the Axioms, had based their entire relationship with humanity on the assumption that humans were newcomers to space travel, barely evolved enough to join galactic society. But if humans had built this fleet— "Dr. Thompson," he said, his voice steady despite his racing thoughts, How long will it take to access these control systems? She was already working, her fingers moving across surfaces that seemed to respond to her touch. That's another strange thing, Captain. These systems, it's almost like they were designed to be easily understood by, well, pious. Behind them, the Axiom observers had fallen completely silent, their crystalline forms now dark with concern. The humans' 2-week deadline suddenly felt much shorter. Dr. Thompson's fingers moved across another control panel, her face lit by the soft glow of ancient displays that had started responding to their presence. The bridge of the flagship was slowly coming to life around them, systems awakening after 50,000 years of silence. "Captain," she called out, her voice tense with excitement. "I think I found something. These symbols, they're changing as I read them. It's like the ship is translating them into modern English." Miller rushed over, the magnetic boots of his suit clanking against the metal floor. The Axiom observers followed, their crystalline forms casting shifting shadows on the walls. "That's not possible," the first Axiom observer stated. "No computer system can maintain functionality after." A deep hum cut through the ship, making everyone freeze. Lights began to flicker on, not just on the bridge but throughout the massive vessel. Through the viewports, they could see other ships in the fleet beginning to illuminate as well. "What did you do?" Miller asked Thompson quietly. I was reading the symbols, and my hand must have." She stopped as a holographic display suddenly burst to life in the center of the bridge. Unlike the crude holograms of modern ships, this one was crystal clear, showing a spinning DNA helix. A voice spoke, neither male nor female, its tone somehow both ancient and new. "Genetic profile confirmed. Descendants of the builders detected. Beginning revival sequence." The Axiom observers backed away, their forms pulsing with alarm. "This must be stopped," one demanded. "Captain Miller, you have no authority to activate unknown technology of this scale." But Miller barely heard them. The DNA hologram had transformed into a star map, showing the galaxy as it had looked 50,000 years ago. A soft blue light washed over the human team members, scanning them. "Welcome, children of Earth," the voice said. "This is Sentinel Fleet Alpha, preserved by your ancestors for this moment." "Our ancestors," Thompson whispered. "Your genetic profiles match those of the builder race, those you would call the ancient humans. This fleet was left in dormancy, awaiting the return of compatible descendants." The second Axiom observer's form was now flashing rapidly with patterns that Miller recognized as extreme agitation. "The Council must be notified immediately. This activation of unknown technology threatens the stability of." "The Council has no authority here," the ship's eye interrupted, its voice somehow managing to sound both polite and dismissive. "This fleet's protocols recognize only builder authority, which now transfers to their confirmed descendants." Through the viewports, they could see the rest of the fleet coming alive. Massive engines that had slept for millennia began to power up, creating ripples of energy that their sensors couldn't even measure. The ships were transforming, sections moving and reconfiguring in ways that seemed to defy physics. "Captain," Thompson said, her voice filled with awe, "look at these readings. The technology. It's centuries beyond anything we have now, beyond anything the Council races have." Miller turned to the hologram. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why did our ancestors leave this fleet here?" "A threat was discovered," the eye replied. "A threat that would return to this galaxy in approximately 50,000 years. The builders knew their descendants would need the fleet's capabilities when that time came." The Axiom observers were now backing toward the exit. "This must be reported to the Council," one said. "All operations must cease until—" Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The star map hologram changed, showing the edge of the galaxy. Something was approaching. Something massive. "Alert," the AI announced, its voice now urgent. "The threat has returned ahead of projected schedule. Estimated arrival in Council space. 3 standard days." Miller felt his blood run cold. What threat? What's coming? The hologram zoomed in on the approaching entity. What had looked like a single mass was revealed to be billions of smaller objects, moving together like a swarm of locusts through space. The Devourers, the AI said simply. They consume all energy in their path, stars, planets, life itself. This fleet was designed to stop them. The AI paused. The builders called them world eaters. And they are hungry. The Axiom observers flood the bridge, their crystalline forms nearly white with fear. But Miller stood his ground, watching the hologram as the ancient ships of the fleet continued their transformation around him. Humanity's greatest test was coming, and their ancestors had left them the tools to face it. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. The Axiom observers had reported back, and now every representative was talking at once. High Counselor Vale's crystalline form pulsed with bright, angry colors as he tried to restore order. Captain Miller stood calmly in the center of the storm, Dr. Thompson beside him. Above them, massive screens showed the ancient fleet, now fully awakened, its ships still slowly transforming into configurations that defied modern engineering principles. "This is an outrage," a council member shouted. "Activating unknown technology without authorization." "They had no right," another began. Vale's voice cut through the noise. "Captain Miller," he said, his tone sharp as broken glass, "explain yourself." Miller looked up at the screens. "The fleet's AI is showing us everything," he said quietly, "about our past, about why these ships exist. I think you all need to see this." He nodded to Thompson, who activated a device. The chamber's holographic systems connected to the fleet's AI, and suddenly the room was filled with images of Earth, but not the Earth they knew. This was Earth from 50,000 years ago, covered in cities that made their modern ones look primitive. The AI's voice filled the chamber. "The civilization you know as humanity is not the first to arise from Earth. Before them, your ancestors achieved technological advancement far beyond what exists today." Images flowed around them. Massive space stations, ships that could fold space itself, cities that stretched up into the clouds. The council members fell silent, watching. But they discovered something in their explorations, the AI continued. A threat that would return to this galaxy every 50,000 years. The World Eaters. The images change, showing massive swarms moving through space, consuming everything in their path. Stars winked out. Planets crumbled. Entire systems went dark. "The ancient humans fought them," the AI said, "and won, but at a great cost. They knew the World Eaters would return, and they knew their civilization might not survive to face them again." "What happened to them?" Thompson asked, her voice barely a whisper. "They made a choice. Instead of waiting for the World Eaters' return, they built this fleet, designed specifically to combat the threat. Then they left this galaxy." The council chamber erupted again. "Left the galaxy?" Vale demanded. "That's impossible." "No," the AI replied simply. "They had mastered intergalactic travel, but they knew such a journey would change them. They would evolve, adapt to new conditions. Their descendants, those who stayed behind, would need to start over, rebuild from the beginning. But they left this fleet, waiting for the day their children would reach for the stars again." Miller stepped forward. "The fleet recognizes our genetic pattern. We're those descendants, and the World Eaters are coming back, sooner than our ancestors predicted." "This is absurd," Vale said, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. "You expect us to believe that humans, primitive humans who barely achieved spaceflight 10,000 years ago, are actually descended from a civilization more advanced than our own?" "The evidence is right in front of you," Miller replied, pointing to the screens where the ancient ships continued their impossible transformations. "Everything the council races have achieved. Everything you pride yourselves on. Humanity had already discovered 50,000 years ago. And then they found something even greater. What could be greater than our current technological achievements? A council member asked. The AI answered, the ability to start over, to leave behind everything you've built, everything you've become, to ensure your descendants would survive. The ancient humans knew that fighting the world eaters required more than just advanced technology. It required something that couldn't be programmed or engineered, the human spirit of innovation, of adaptation, of facing the unknown. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just stumbled into space travel. They were returning to it, carrying in their very genes the legacy of a civilization that had once surpassed anything the galaxy had ever known. The World Eaters will reach Council space in less than 3 days, Miller said into the silence. We can either work together, or we can watch everything you've built disappear. The choice is yours. Vale's crystalline form had dimmed to a dull glow. For the first time since Miller had known him, the High Counselor looked uncertain. The ancient fleet hung in space, its transformation nearly complete, waiting for humanity to reclaim its birthright. The first attack came at the edge of Council space. A small mining colony of the Axioms went dark without warning. Then another, and another. The Council's most advanced warships rushed to investigate, their crews confident in their superior technology. None of them came back. Captain Miller watched from the bridge of the ancient flagship as the tactical display showed more systems going dark. The World Eaters moved like a vast cloud through space, consuming everything in their path. The Council's mighty ships, the same ones whose captains had laughed at the primitive human fleet, were swallowed without a trace. They're moving faster than the AI predicted, Dr. Thompson said, her eyes fixed on the display. The transformed bridge around them hummed with power that their instruments couldn't even measure. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds in less than a day. High Counselor Vale's hologram appeared before them, his crystalline form dimmer than usual. Captain Miller, he said, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. The Council's fleet has engaged the enemy at the Arcturus sector. He paused, as if the words pained him. We request your assistance. Miller nodded grimly. Show me. The tactical display shifted, showing the battle, or rather, the slaughter. The Council's most powerful warships fired their advanced energy weapons at the swarm. Their beams simply disappeared into the dark mass, absorbed without effect. The World Eaters didn't even slow down. Our weapons have no effect, Vale reported, his form flickering with what Miller now recognized as fear. They're consuming the energy from our attacks, using it to grow stronger. Even our quantum disruption torpedoes. He stopped as another fleet of Council ships vanished from the display. The ancient fleet's AI spoke up. The World Eaters operate on principles beyond conventional physics. They exist partially outside normal spacetime, which is why energy weapons are useless against them. The builders designed this fleet specifically to counter their abilities. Miller watched as another system went dark. Then it's time to show them what these old ships can do. He turned to his crew, all human now that the Council observers had fled. Battle stations, all ships, prepare for combat deployment. The ancient fleet moved as one, its 1,000 ships now fully transformed into their true forms. What had looked like primitive vessels were now something else entirely, geometric shapes that seemed to bend reality around them, hulls that shifted and flowed like liquid metal, but were harder than any material known to modern science. Multiple Council evacuation ships are under attack in Sector 7, Thompson reported. Civilian vessels, carrying refugees from the outer colonies. That's our target, Miller said. All ships, jump on my mark. The ancient fleet's engines powered up, but they didn't use the standard faster-than-light drives of modern ships. Instead, space itself seemed to fold around them. In an instant, they appeared between the refugee ships and the approaching swarm. Vale's hologram watched in astonishment as the ancient ships began to move. They didn't fight like modern vessels. They didn't fire energy weapons or launch torpedoes. Instead, they created patterns in space itself. geometric forms that trapped and redirected the World Eaters' attacks. Impossible, Vale whispered as he watched the battle unfold. They're using the fabric of space-time as a weapon. The ancient ships danced through space, their movements precise and coordinated. Where modern weapons had failed, these 50,000-year-old vessels were holding their ground. They didn't try to destroy the World Eaters. They contained them, redirected them, forced them away from populated systems. But even as they fought, Miller could see it wasn't enough. For every section of the swarm they pushed back, two more appeared. The World Eaters were learning, adapting, probing for weaknesses in the ancient fleet's defenses. "Captain," Thompson called out, her voice tight with concern. "The AI is saying these are just the scout forces. The main swarm is still coming." Miller gripped his command chair as another wave of World Eaters crashed against their defenses. The ancient fleet was humanity's legacy, their inheritance from a civilization that had once ruled the stars. But would it be enough to save the galaxy? The main bridge of the ancient flagship shook as another wave of World Eaters crashed against their defenses. Captain Miller watched as the tactical display showed the true scale of what they faced. The scout forces had been nothing compared to this. The main swarm stretched across entire sectors, a living darkness that devoured everything in its path. "Hull integrity at 60%, Dr. Thompson reported, her fingers dancing across controls that responded to her touch like they were part of her own body. "The outer defense grid is failing." The AI's voice remained calm. "Initiating contingency protocols. Captain Miller, your crew must make a choice now." "What choice?" Miller asked, steadying himself as another impact rocked the ship. The builders left more than just ships and weapons. They left their knowledge, their understanding of the universe itself. But accessing it requires complete integration with the fleet's systems. The AI paused. "Your bodies and minds must temporarily merge with the ships themselves." Thompson looked up from her station. "Merge? You mean become one with the ships?" "Yes. The World Eaters cannot be fought with conventional means. The builders discovered that victory required a deeper connection. Human consciousness working in perfect harmony with the fleet's quantum systems." High Counselor Vale's hologram appeared, his crystalline form barely visible. "Captain Miller, we've lost contact with the outer colonies. The Council fleet, it's gone. All of it." For the first time, there was no pride in his voice, only fear. Miller looked at his crew. They were tired, scared, but in their eyes he saw determination. "What do we need to do?" "Enter the integration chambers," the AI instructed as panels opened in the bridge floor, revealing pods filled with a silvery liquid. "Your consciousness will join with the fleet's quantum network. You will see and understand as the builders did." The crew looked at Miller. He nodded. "We don't have a choice. Everyone in." As Miller stepped into his pod, the liquid felt warm, alive. He lay back, and the silver fluid covered him completely. For a moment, there was darkness. Then his mind exploded with light. He was the ship. He was the fleet. He could feel every circuit, every quantum pathway. The universe looked different now. He could see the strands of reality itself, the threads that held space and time together. And he could see how to pull those threads. Around him, he felt the consciousness of his crew, all of them connected, all of them understanding. Dr. Thompson's voice echoed in his mind, filled with awe. "Captain, the physics they knew, the science, it's beautiful." The World Eaters weren't just creatures. They were wounds in reality, tears in the fabric of space-time. And now Miller could see how to heal those wounds. "All ships," he commanded with his thoughts, "initiate full transformation sequence." The ancient fleet changed again. The ships merged, split, recombined in impossible ways. They weren't just ships anymore. They were tools to reshape reality itself. What had seemed like simple metal became living geometry, patterns that could bend the laws of physics. Vale's hologram watched in stunned silence as the transformed fleet began to move. The ships didn't fight the World Eaters. They rewrote the space around them. Where the swarm tried to feed, they found reality itself had changed. Their attempts to devour energy were turned back on themselves. Now, Miller commanded. The fleet moved as one. 1,000 ships guided by human minds enhanced with builder knowledge. They created a pattern in space, a vast geometric web that trapped and contained the World Eaters. The swarm fought back, but for the first time, they faced an enemy they couldn't simply devour. But it still wasn't enough. The swarm was too vast, too hungry. Miller could feel his crew straining against the endless assault. Then the AI spoke again. Accessing final protocol. Initiating builder override. New information flooded into their joined minds, the last, greatest secret of the ancient humans. Miller understood now why they had left this fleet, why they had waited for their descendants to return. Because only humans, with their unique consciousness, could unlock its true power. All ships, Miller commanded, his mind burning with new knowledge. Prepare for dimensional shift. We're about to show them why our ancestors were feared across the galaxy. Reality itself seemed to bend as the ancient fleet executed its final protocol. The ships, now merged with their human crews, moved in ways that defied the laws of physics. Captain Miller, his consciousness spread across the quantum network, felt the power of 50,000 years of human achievement flowing through him. Dimensional shift complete. Dr. Thompson's thoughts echoed through their shared consciousness. We're operating on all 11 dimensions now. The World Eaters sensed the change. Their vast swarm twisted in space, trying to adapt to this new threat. But for the first time, they showed signs of something new. Fear. High Counselor Vale's hologram flickered as he watched the battle unfold. The crystalline being had no words for what he was seeing. The ancient fleet now existed in multiple dimensions at once, their forms shifting between states of matter that modern science hadn't even discovered yet. Now they understand, the AI said, its voice resonating through the quantum network. This is why the builders were feared. This is why they had to leave. Miller directed the fleet with thoughts that moved faster than light. The ships responded instantly, creating patterns in space-time that trapped and isolated sections of the World Eater swarm. What modern weapons couldn't touch, the ancient fleet cut apart with geometric precision. They're retreating. Thompson's excitement rippled through the network. The World Eaters were pulling back, their vast swarm breaking apart as it tried to escape the fleet's dimensional attacks. But Miller felt something else through the network, a deeper truth about why his ancestors had left this fleet behind. We're not letting them retreat, he commanded. We're ending this. Forever. The fleet moved into its final formation. 1,000 ships, guided by human minds enhanced with builder knowledge, created something that hadn't been seen in 50,000 years. A dimensional lock, a cage built from the fabric of reality itself. Full power to the quantum core, Miller ordered. All ships, execute pattern Omega. The fleet began to glow with impossible light as it drew power from dimensions beyond normal space. The World Eaters found themselves trapped, unable to feed, unable to escape. Their swarm, which had devoured entire civilizations, was powerless against the legacy of ancient humanity. Vale watched in awe as the fleet executed its final attack. The ships didn't destroy the World Eaters, they rewrote the laws of physics around them, changing the very rules that allowed them to exist. The swarm began to dissolve, its connection to our dimension severed forever. When it was over, when the last of the World Eaters had been banished to a dimension where they could never threaten anyone again, Miller felt the fleet beginning to release its human crew. One by one, they emerged from the integration pods, forever changed by what they had experienced. The AI spoke one last time. Final protocol complete. Accessing builder message. A new hologram appeared on the bridge, a message left 50,000 years ago. It showed Earth as it had been then, a world of wonders and achievements beyond imagination. A human figure spoke. To our descendants, if you're seeing this, you've proven yourselves worthy of your heritage. The World Eaters were only one of the threats we discovered in our exploration of the cosmos. There are others, sleeping, waiting. But now you know who you are, what you can become. The message changed, showing coordinates that led beyond the galaxy's edge. We left this fleet to protect you, to give you time to grow, to evolve in your own way. But now it's time for you to find us. We've been waiting, watching from the stars we now call home. Come find us, children of Earth. Come home. The council chamber was silent as the message ended. The races that had once laughed at primitive humans now looked at them with new eyes. Humanity hadn't just saved the galaxy. They had reclaimed their place as one of its most ancient and powerful civilizations. Miller looked at his crew, saw in their eyes the same mix of exhaustion and wonder that he felt. They had inherited more than just a fleet today. They had inherited a destiny. "Captain," Vale said, his crystalline form glowing with respectful colors, "what will humanity do now?" Miller smiled, looking at the coordinates that would lead them to their long-lost ancestors. "What humans have always done, Counselor. We're going to explore the unknown." In the void of space, the ancient fleet hung silent once more, its power dormant, but not forgotten. And somewhere, beyond the edge of the galaxy, humanity's past was waiting to meet its future.